It begins quietly, not with sound, but with a shift. A moment disguised as ordinary, yet folded in on itself like a note written backwards. June 7th isn't just a day on the calendar. It's a reflective surface hiding in plain sight. Look at the numbers. 7-5-7. It's a numerical palindrome, yes, but it's more than symmetry. It's an energetic hinge, a pivot point suspended between two mirrors. Time doesn't flow through this day. It folds, turns, and refracts. What appears still is actually bending, just enough to make the familiar feel slightly misaligned. There's a sense, isn't there, that something unseen has already begun? The atmosphere carries a kind of residue, like static clinging to the corners of the room. Not chaotic, just unfamiliar. Not everyone notices it, but for those attuned, the edges of reality feel more porous than usual. Conversations feel layered. Glances hold meanings that don't belong to the moment. It's as if reality is being echoed back, but slightly warped, like a message passed through water. Could that be coincidence, or is there something else nudging the signal? What's coming next might just be the missing piece you didn't know you were looking for. Hit subscribe, because the next message wasn't meant to be missed. Some will dismiss it, and maybe they should. After all, it's easier to function when things behave as expected. But others, those who feel the internal pulse quicken when nothing seems to be happening, might recognize this for what it is. A threshold, not loud, not violent, just open. And the strangest part? Stepping through doesn't feel like moving forward. It feels like waking up in the same room, except now the walls breathe slightly and the shadows don't fall where they used to. What's actually changed? Or has it always been like this and only now revealed itself? Some days behave like glass, not because they're fragile, but because they reflect without warning. June 7th is one of them. It carries the architecture of a mirror cleverly hidden inside time's machinery. At first glance, it appears as just another numerical stamp, a casual coordinate in the long scroll of the calendar. But try looking sideways. What's coded into this day doesn't speak in words, it resonates. The pattern isn't linear. It loops, echoes, folds back on itself. What if this date isn't tracking time forward, but actually folding it inward? Could it be possible that time isn't passing through the day, but circling it? It's strange how the atmosphere shifts when such a day arrives. Conversations veer into uncanny territory, and interactions grow sharp or unexplainably weightless. Some people will say odd things without knowing why. Others might vanish mid-thought, as if tugged momentarily out of sync, and yet most will write it off as coincidence or mood. But for those watching closely, there's a subtle signal in the noise. The date behaves like a prism, splitting reality into fragments and inviting observation, if not understanding. Has anything out of the ordinary already happened today? Or did it slip by so smoothly that it felt ordinary? If something inside you felt still while watching this, it means you're aligning. Subscribe and stay close, because the transmission continues. It's easy to miss the moment something changes, especially when that change is designed to hide in plain sight. That's the risk this portal presents. Not that it's hard to enter, but that it's too easy to ignore. And when it's gone, there's a kind of echo that lingers in the background, almost like forgetting a dream that clearly meant something. What was it trying to say? And more importantly, was anyone really listening? There's an architecture beneath this moment that most won't notice unless they pause long enough to let it reveal itself. It begins in digits, harmless, familiar, forgettable. 7-5-7. At first it just reads like a pattern, but that's not what's happening. The final 7 doesn't sit where eyes expect it. It's folded into the tail of the year. 2 and 5 don't look like 7, but they conspire to become it. Suddenly, the symmetry isn't just on the surface, it's embedded. This isn't about numerology in the casual sense. It's about something else, design, not symbol, structure, a frequency that folds back onto itself and traps time like light in a prism. If anything feels off today, it isn't random. It's not chaos, it's precision. The illusion is that events are scattered. The truth is, they're sequenced. And the sequence is curved. That's why things repeat, but slightly misaligned. Conversations that echo old ones, Choices that seem recycled with a twist, faces that spark recognition from somewhere uncertain. This is not a glitch. It's a hall of mirrors made of numbers, and today is the moment when the reflection breaks formation, just enough to make one ask, is the pattern revealing itself, or has it always been here, waiting for attention? Still thinking about what you just heard? That's not an accident. Subscribe. Let what's waking up in you keep unfolding. Everyone has seen repeating numbers, those common markers that feel like the universe blinking. But this isn't a blink. It's a framework. It doesn't point toward a message. It is the message. That might sound abstract, and it should, because what's happening isn't meant to be immediately understood. It's meant to interrupt, not violently, but firmly. So now the question hangs in the air. What does it mean when the very code of a day seems to be watching from the inside out? And more importantly, who built it this way? Some moments feel like déjà vu, but stripped of the usual haze. They land sharper, like a memory played backwards, with the ending rewritten mid-scene. Today carries that sensation, not just repetition, but inversion, like a replica day rendered inside out. And this isn't coming from the usual sensory layer. This doesn't arise from emotion or instinct or any of the familiar undercurrents often labeled as intuition. What's occurring now bypasses that altogether. This is not a whisper from within, it's a transmission from beyond. What's stirring today has been dubbed by some the seventh sense. Not a metaphor, not a theory, but a kind of recognition that descends fully formed. It doesn't ask for interpretation. It installs itself like a memory that was never lived but somehow belongs. That unexplainable moment of stepping into another room without knowing why and finding something there. That flash of clarity just before an unread message appears. That inner click when the future feels like it already happened 5 minutes ago. These aren't accidents, they're signals, wrapped in experience, not reason. Something subtle yet forceful collapses the boundary between inner and outer perception. Not hallucination, not anxiety, just a direct tap into something most people forgot how to trust. Thought doesn't guide it, emotion doesn't color it, and if the rhythm of the day feels fragmented, if time feels like it's buffering between frames or running in 2 layers at once, it's not a glitch, it's an entrance. So now the question slips in sideways. What if this is not a malfunction in the mind, but a new channel opening in the field? And if that's true, when exactly did it start? There are moments when cognition lags behind presence, as if the body arrives in a room before the mind figures out why. Thought tries to stitch the world together with evidence, explanation, and pattern, but this isn't one of those days. Today operates on another frequency entirely, one where understanding is no longer required for something to be real. Silence feels unusually dense. Noise feels strangely hollow. There's a pull behind certain actions that logic can't account for. And while the brain spins for meaning, another part, deeper, quieter, already knows. Not through deduction, but through sheer participation. The question is, what happens when reality is no longer filtered through thought? There's an underlying current today that subtly rewires perception. Some will chalk it up to fatigue or mood swings, but others might sense a dissonance too precise to ignore. It's not discomfort, it's an invitation. The sensation of something arriving, but without fanfare. As if an unseen mechanism just clicked into place. The alignment is not symbolic, it's spatial, energetic, intentional. And like any vault, this one doesn't open by accident. It waits for 3 cues, each one quiet, unassuming, and personal. A specific conversation, a repeated gesture, a peculiar delay. Do these things really mean something? Or is it meaning that's revealing itself through them? The idea of a spiritual vault might sound poetic, even far-fetched. But isn't it stranger to assume every odd sensation is meaningless? On days like this, presence becomes the only key that fits. Not alertness, not anxiety, just stillness so exact it syncs the internal compass with something no instrument can measure. So ask gently, has anything arrived today that didn't knock? And what if that's the point? That the most important messages don't knock at all. Some patterns don't ask to be noticed, they arrive uninvited, yet perfectly timed. They don't respond to effort, nor do they bend to intention. Instead, they appear when alignment happens naturally, when internal rhythm matches the invisible tempo of something larger. For some, the first signal emerges through numbers, no longer just math, but frequency encoded in form. 757, yes, but also those unexpected strings, 141, 212, sequences that land precisely during a moment of thought, as if the thought summoned them. Others find their signal through light, not metaphorical light, but actual flickers, lamps glitching for a second, screens blinking without warning, sunlight arriving in a sudden, almost intrusive burst. Then there are the sounds, the names, the echoes, a lyric that lands in the exact emotion one thought was private, a voice from the past surfacing without reason. These are not messages in the ordinary sense. They're thresholds. And here's where it becomes strange. Often, 2 of the 3 keys are already in place before one even realizes a lock exists. The third one, though, that's the trigger. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't scream. It lands like gravity, suddenly shifting its anchor point. The air feels heavier or thinner, colors sharpen, or maybe thoughts slow just enough to stretch. And when that happens, there's no debate. There's just the sensation of everything, internal and external, clicking into a new arrangement. So the real question becomes, how many signals have already passed unnoticed? How often does the portal form, waiting silently, never opened because the final key arrived without recognition? And what happens when, just once, all 3 arrive, and one actually sees them for what they are? Some days don't arrive with ceremony. They don't declare their meaning through grand disruption or spectacle. They settle in softly like mist, unseen until breath starts to feel thicker. Today is one of those days, and while some will brush it off as uneventful, others might feel it like a vibration under the skin, subtle, persistent, and curiously personal. The portal isn't announced, it's embedded, and its mechanism isn't chaos, it's precision through quiet. What many mistake for stillness is actually filtration. The space itself begins to sift through attention, through awareness, through resonance. This filtration isn't moral. It's not interested in appearances or achievements or carefully curated narratives. It doesn't respond to spiritual performance or self-assigned titles. What it seeks is something far more difficult to fake: perception. Not as in belief systems, but as in presence. The kind that doesn't need explanation to recognize that something is different. That's the real test. Can awareness remain awake without the usual signals? Can the shift be detected when it speaks in shadows instead of symbols? Many won't realize the test is even underway. That's part of its design. When the third signal lands, those watching closely will sense the field bend. Not dramatically, but decisively. It's the final moment before something clicks into place or passes silently. Ever wonder why some events are remembered not for what happened, but for what almost did? For what was felt but not seen? Maybe the test isn't whether one responds. Maybe it's whether one notices at all. Some disruptions are so small they nearly escape perception, like a shiver passing through a conversation or a half-second delay in something that's always been seamless. But on days like this, the subtle becomes significant. Reality doesn't shake the ground. It taps the shoulder. A phrase lands too precisely, a glance lingers too long, a screen freezes in the exact moment a hidden thought surfaces. These moments don't come to prove anything. They come to register presence. And the real question isn't whether they happen, it's whether they're noticed. This isn't about paranoia or overanalysis. It's about recognition. What if these flickers aren't accidents, but part of a diagnostic, like sonar pulses sent through the day to locate awareness? Calibration checks. Small, deliberate anomalies that test the response time of perception. One could call them coincidences, and many do, but every so often they line up too cleanly to ignore. That knot in the gut, that static in the air, those aren't emotional reactions. They're data responses from a deeper field of knowing, responding to a subtle shift in the grid. There are certain moments when perception feels like it's folding in on itself, not because something sinister is watching, but because something aware is reflecting. Not a presence that judges or intrudes, but one that waits patiently to see if its own reflection will be recognized. Today carries that texture. Not everyone will feel it. For most, it slips past like a regular timestamp. But for those tuned to the quiet, there's a noticeable weight behind the stillness, like the pause between thoughts has stretched just wide enough to let something else through. What's happening now isn't psychological, it's spatial, a frequency, not a feeling. And that presence, the one nested behind the mirror of awareness, isn't asking to be believed. It's asking to be noticed. The 757 configuration acts like a signal amplifier. Every thought, every subtle vibration loops back, not as consequence, but as reflection. Imagine a canyon that doesn't just echo, but multiplies. Not repetition, but recursion. The signal goes out and returns louder, charged, raw, undeniable, and it returns fast. Not hours, not days, seconds. This isn't about attracting things or performing some cosmic request. It's about recognizing that attention has gravity. That presence itself is an intelligence, and it's mirroring everything right now. Whatever rises inside, however fleeting, however quiet, becomes the architecture of experience. That's not metaphor, it's mechanics. So if anything today has circled back unexpectedly, emotion, thought, symbol, or silence, maybe ask this: what if presence doesn't watch to judge, but to confirm recognition? And what if what's being recognized is the one doing the watching? Some energies don't ripple, they snap, immediate, undiluted, like thought has bypassed the usual process and gone straight into architecture. That's the atmosphere moving through today, one where inner states aren't expressed, they're projected. Not slowly, not subtly, instantly. A single moment of tension, and suddenly others flinch. A flicker of peace, and the room exhales. It's not mystical, it's mechanical. The 757 mirror doesn't scan for meaning. It registers input and reflects it back, untouched, like a lens made of intention and light. This isn't about karma or morality, it's reflection, pure and unfiltered. Thought in this field is no longer private. It becomes radiant, shining outward, touching everything, then folding back in with consequence. Clocks pause mid-tick. Words evaporate mid-sentence. Encounters stretch out or break off without cause. That's not confusion. That's a neutral frequency being met by a world unsure how to respond. Because this portal doesn't care what's wished for, it reveals what's present. If the mind holds a question, the day becomes elusive. If it holds clarity, things move like pieces falling into a magnetic grid. But here's the sharp edge: amplification. One stray thought can become a chain reaction. An emotion unacknowledged can spin a quiet day into chaos. And none of it is punishment, it's just echo. Thought becomes tone. Tone becomes reality. And sometimes the amplification is gentle, like a sudden opportunity that matches a fleeting moment of gratitude. Other times it's disruptive, a conflict that spirals from a passing doubt. So maybe it's worth asking, what's being reflected right now? Not in words, not in outcomes, but in the silence between events? Because something is bouncing back, and it's arriving faster than most are used to. Some days don't offer messages, they become them. The space itself stops being neutral and begins responding like a chamber of tuned glass. Today, the response is not slow, and it's not abstract. It's vibration. Whatever is being broadcast internally doesn't vanish into thought. It pulses outward, refracted, magnified, returned. What's spoken internally, whether in language or in feeling, bounces back with force, sometimes louder than it was originally sent. It's not metaphor, it's resonance. And this day, it listens in frequencies that rarely get a stage. Energy today is not passive. It doesn't just hover around, it interacts directly and physically. Those who felt strange heat spikes or sudden chills in otherwise steady spaces aren't imagining things. They're registering, and not just emotionally, physiologically. It's the body being picked up like a sensor, responding to energetic infrastructure that doesn't wait for belief. On days like this, the signal doesn't just move through dreams or omens. It takes the express route, through skin, through breath, through pulse. The nervous system becomes the antenna, and it doesn't lie. Sometimes the atmosphere doesn't just exist around the body, it actively scans it. On days like this, there's a precision to the way reality interacts, as though it's sending out energetic pulses like sonar, watching to see what bounces back. These aren't signals in the conventional sense. They move through sensation, heat that appears mid-thought, a cold rush when nothing has shifted in the room. It's not illness, it's feedback. The field is alive, and it's checking for resonance. When the temperature suddenly shifts, so does the moment. Cold means pause, heat means passage. Not randomly, but at the exact second consciousness begins to stir. And it's not just about the room. These pulses sync with inner movement. Thoughts, memories, arrivals. A forgotten phrase. A name appearing out of context. A person walking in and, for no tangible reason, changing the charge of the space. The reaction might show up on the skin, or in the gut, or through a quiet clench at the back of the neck. But it's not discomfort, it's data. Each flicker is a check-in. Something intangible wants to know. Is perception awake enough to notice what just crossed the threshold? What matters is what happens next. The moment the body reacts, awareness has an opening to ask, to decode, to respond. Most of these pulses don't linger. They hit, reflect, and fade, like signals testing the range of a deeper awareness. So maybe it's worth circling back. Was there a moment today when something felt off, even briefly? Did someone reflect a mood or phrase that had been kept internal? Did the atmosphere shift just before or after something internal moved? If so, that wasn't coincidence. That was the echo doing what it always does, revealing the signal from where it came.